So welcome back to my channel. This is Gamer Dom and time for another rambles. Yay, we love a bit of rambling. So what's coming up in this edition? Well, we're going to take a look at the sandbox and the new HD maps that have been shown off there and tested out. Also, community contributors went out to Minsk and there's a sort of Q&A with developers there, which gives us some interesting insight into what's coming up and being planned for the game. Also, a new tank is being replaced. No premiums this week, but a new tank replacement being rumoured. This time the T10, the Russian Tier 9 heavy tank. Chances that that might be going out of the game. And also the first iteration of my own little study of matchmaking at Tier 8. And what I've discovered in terms of the tiers I tend to get in the fights with our Tier 8 tanks. Anyway, let's crack on. Okay, so looks like patch 9.2 0.1. Why do I have such trouble saying that? 921, let's do that, will officially be downloaded to the Russian servers on the 17th of October, so the Monday to Tuesday night, basically 16th to 17th. We can expect EU and North America to be a day later, so that'll be the 18th of October, and Asia a week later. So that's how much time you've got to grind to through the Conqueror if that's what you're doing. You have a few days left. Get working. So last week a number of the community contributors whisked off to Wargames office in Minsk to have a look at the new HD maps that they've been working on and talking about incessantly for the last year. We need new maps, Wargaming, new maps, not just pretty maps, new maps. Anyway, we're not getting any new maps anytime soon, apart from the 30v30 ones maybe. But certainly pretty maps are the order of the day, and it's I'm not a community contributor, but if I was, I'd probably be a bit peeved actually. I got dragged all the way over to Minsk to have a look at these things, to have an exclusive look into the new HD maps, to then video them and stick them up on our channels and whatnot, and then they went and stuck it up on the sandbox where anybody with access to the sandbox could see it, so bang went their exclusivity. And if you go on YouTube, you can see countless examples of these maps, and they do look very, very good. Really nice scenery. They look a lot bigger. They don't seem to have that artificial boundary that the current maps do. I mean, they do, they're still the same size, but the way they've modelled them with the mountains and things on the outside makes it look very, very impressive. You know, they've done a lot of work on the foliage. The grass moves, I believe, when you fire a shot. It actually sways as you do it. And there's a couple of the maps they've actually changed. So there's a few extra features in there that weren't previously there, but they've done a lot to sort of change the colour of the place and make it look much more authentic. So Himmelsdorf has a much more Germanic feel to it, Redshire has a more British feel to it, El Haluf has a more Arabian type feel to it. So they've made a big effort around how they make these things feel. Things like the water mechanics have been overhauled in them, so that if you drive through water it looks much more realistic. I believe the tanks actually look wet when they come out of it. Also, if you fire your gun in the water, there's a sort of ripple effect in front of the tank where, from the trajectory of the shell coming out of the gun and flying along, the sort of sound waves and what have you will actually cause the water to ripple in front. Similarly, if you fire through a bush or over grass, that will sway and move according to where the shell went through. Or more mechanically, I guess more accurately, the actual sort of wind effect or the velocity, I can't think of the words, but the effect of the shell coming out and displacing the air as it moves has effect on the terrain and everything else. So really, really pretty, and no doubt about it. And they claim that this will not have any significant impact on our PCs. We'll see, but nice to see the pretty maps, nice to see they're thinking of us and making it look lovely, but we still need new maps, right? New maps, that's what we need. So this was a teaser that Wargaming put out a little while ago about the new look maps. You can get a sense of how pretty they look. They've really made a big effort to improve the graphics, and it does look damn good. Look at that water, fantastic, really impressive. And they've definitely done a lot to try and improve the feel of the regions, so that they look like, you know, a particular region. They look like a particular country, which is kind of good. I mean, it doesn't affect the gameplay, obviously, but you know, it is nice when you're playing on something that looks nice, and they put a lot of work into improving the tanks, so it's nice that they've improved the maps too, I guess. But we do still need maps. So another Q&A. We all love a good Q&A, don't we? Isn't it intriguing why Wargaming always have some pretty young thing advertising any events that they do? Can't think why that would be. Right, so most of this came out, I think, out of the collaborators, Freudian slip, community contributors trip to Minsk, where they got to see the new maps, which then got shown to everybody via the sandbox. Oh, well, anyway, but so this was primarily around the maps themselves. So question was, when are HD maps going to be released, and will they all come at the same time? And the answer is fairly bland. Of they're working on them all. They'll release them as soon as they're ready. If they have to do them in waves, they will. There we go. Questions around some of the settings. Now, what they've said in these map modes is that they shouldn't impact on the PC that you're running. So it's one of the things I do actually admire Wargaming for. They've tried really hard to make a game that is not so demanding of the of your processing power that you know, only those in the best rigs can actually play the game. You can play this game on a shitty little laptop if you require. Now, you're not going to get a full experience of all the wonderful graphics, but you can still have a good game. For a good year and a half, 2 years, when I started playing the game, I did just that. I played on a shitty little laptop, and it wasn't until I thought, right, I'm going to invest in a little bit of a better PC, and it's still not a fantastic PC by any means. I bought the tower I use now, but it's nice that you don't have to. You can run it on anything you've got, really, which is good. There were some questions around the spawns. So the steps north spawn and the HD maps need some tweaking, so they're looking at that. Question everybody wants to know is, will there be new maps coming anytime soon? And sadly, well, the positive answer is, the answer from Wargaming is, we know players want new maps. However, it's impossible to create new maps at the same time when we're in the process of converting the existing maps into HD maps. We're aware that there's been no new maps for a long time, brackets 2 years. We have plans for new maps, but they will come after the HD mapping is done. So I guess it's positive they are going to do them, but it looks like we've got a little bit longer to wait. What are the plans for new maps? At the moment, there are a few winter maps we're planning. We'll replace some of the existing maps, and we'll also tell you there will be some reworking of some of the current maps. Now, they've talked about that before. The D-Day map, for instance, they had talked about amending the middle area quite a bit to allow the beach not to be completely cut off from everything else. And you know what happens, all the idiots go down to play with their buckets and spades and die down there, while the rest of their team gets outnumbered and killed above the beach. So that was talked about some time ago, but there's been no change. But given the fact they focused on the HD, that's probably understandable. So they've said, will any of the maps be removed from the game when HD comes? And they've said yes, some of the double maps will be removed from the game. That will be Winterberg, so the Winterberg version of Runeberg, and Winter Himmelsdorf will go. Fiery Salient will also be removed from the game. So we lose 3 maps basically, although they are 3 of the same maps. I guess that doesn't really change anything. Just, I hate losing any maps at all, really, unless they're Erlenberg, which is completely broken. Isn't it a good opportunity to also do map balancing changes when turning maps into HD? And the answer is we know that some maps need changing and improving. We're collecting feedback. Yeah, okay. What maps will be under rework? So they're looking at 3 maps in particular for rework: Fisherman's Bay, Erlenburg and Fjords. That's me applauding, because those 3 maps need serious amount of work. They are god-awful maps. Well, how will those maps mentioned be changed? As of Erlenburg, it will have to be a massive rework. It's too problematic on the public server. No kidding, shit Sherlock. No shit Sherlock. No kidding, shit Sherlock. No shit Sherlock. Erlenburg is broken, and it's particularly broken in assault games. That river down the middle of the thing is just crazy. Absolutely crazy. For Fjords, we have plans to rework the middle section of the map. Good. And lastly, for Fisherman Bay, we're planning to add some hard cover in the fields. So Mark 1 tank corpses. However, it's important to note these are still work in progress, so there can be further changes. Okay. Talking of game performance, what will happen when HD maps are introduced? So this is what I was saying about not impacting your computers. We're working very hard to optimize the game for all kinds of computers. We're aware that still a large number of players still use outdated spec PCs. Minimum graphic requirements stay the same for the time being. However, we're planning to change the minimum requirement in 1 to 2 years' time. I think that's fair. You know, people replace their PCs, and you know, it's good that they do eventually do that. What about mountain goating or boosting? So this is when you climb up. You see people climbing up into, you know, inaccessible parts of the map where really they probably shouldn't be. They got rid of a few, they said. I still see people going up ridiculous places though in games, and generally it's to the detriment of the team, because they're so busy scrambling up there that they don't actually get involved in the game. Mountain goating is a byproduct of when we introduce the new physics. When we introduce the HD maps, some of the locations will not be accessible anymore. There might be some places that still are accessible, and we're collecting more feedback from the community to see if we will remove these places. So they're still continuing to remove them, basically. Question: sandbox test. I don't see any winter maps. What's happened to those? Answer is we're preparing some cool technology that affects for the winter maps, such as leaving tracks on the ground, snow acts like it does in real life, blah de blah de blah. So they will come, basically, is the answer. Question: how long does it take to change a map? It takes on average 2 months, which doesn't seem that much, but it's not simply changing the map. We have to put a lot of extra effort around creating the textures, stabilizing the new map coding and testing. Question about brightness. So they're going to look at that. What will happen with some of the unpopular maps like Kharkov and Stalingrad? These maps are a bit problematic. While we want to make them into HD maps, we have to make priorities for the maps. Doesn't make sense. As much as we want to rework them as well, however, they're problematic and does not work too well in terms of balanced gameplay. We're likely to delay the release of these 2 maps as we want to make them enjoyable for players. So that's a sneaky little nerf. They're going to remove 2 maps. Now, I don't particularly like either of those maps, it's true, but that's 2 less maps. We need more maps. So they're taking them out while they rework them. Jeez. Soon we're going to be like 30v30 mode. You're just going to have 1 map. That's it. Some of the encounter and assault modes are problematic. Will the balancing of the maps put these game modes into consideration in future? Answer on this one is, back a long time ago, players wanted to increase the variety in random battles, therefore we introduced encounters and assault mode. However, there are some balancing issues in these 2 modes. It's very difficult to balance the map when we have to consider both modes and the normal random map mode at the same time. We've decided not to touch these modes in HD rework. We're not planning to remove these modes from the game, But at the same time, we will not add further maps into these two game modes, as there are a significant amount of players that enjoy these modes. So basically, they're admitting that the maps weren't really designed for those other modes. They were designed really for pure random games and don't really work with the other variants. And you know, when you play these games, you know damn well that's the case. But they're not going to be able to do anything anytime soon, which is a shame. Now, I don't really know what else they could do unless they had specific maps that are only for assault. That might be intriguing. Yeah, they need to look at those. What do you think about the anime tanks, the Valkyrie Chronicles series tanks, Edelweiss and the Nameless? Some players think they're overpowered. So these were tanks that were bought in with a link up with the Valkyrie Chronicles, only available on the Asian server, and by all accounts these things are completely overpowered. From our stats, the Nameless is slightly too strong. Slightly too strong. I suspect they're a bit more than slightly, but anyway, they're admitting they are too strong. But fortunately there aren't many of them roaming around, so they're not too disruptive. So we're just going to leave them as they are. Okay, Edelweiss apparently is doing just fine. There are stronger tier 8 mediums than it, and it's just slightly above average. Well, if the stats are saying slightly above average, then I guess that's where it is. But yeah, just as long as we don't get them in the EU server, please. There are many players disliking the current Type 4 and 5 HE guns. When will they be changed, and why is this? And what is the trend of giving more and more armour as super heavies to tanks? Yeah, we know who the people are moaning. They are the super unicums who hate being hit by HE shells because only the unskilled like me use them. Screw you. We're aware that players are very negative feedbacks on the Type 5 and 4. Well, not from here. They're fantastic fun. Some of my most fun tanks. However, at this point, it hasn't reached a critical point, so we'll not be taking any further changes to them now. But we're closely monitoring these two tanks. So basically, stick it up your pipe and smoke it. How is the recently buffed M48 pattern performing? Statistically, it's doing more or less the same. We'll continue to monitor the performance of the pattern. If it's overperforming, we might tweak it later. Okay. The current XM551 model looks very ugly. Will it be changed? Yes, we're planning to replace the current Sheridan model to another one next year, which looks less silly. And there are any plans for the Object 430? The tank isn't very popular as well. We have plans to make the Soviet trio, the Object 140, the Object 430 and the T62A, differentiate from each other. However, it's not finalised yet. Those three together are some of the most powerful tier 10 medium tanks in the game. And they buffed them last time, which I find extraordinary. So they buffed two of the best, the 140 and the T62A. Were buffed. Two of the best in the game, and they got buffed. Because Russian bias. Will RNG be reduced from plus minus 25% to something lower? No. We understand skilled players want the game to be more predictable in terms of fighting against other players. However, we decided to keep the plus minus 25% RNG in the game so players can have their magical and fun moments. For example, when you survive and carry a game because an enemy low rolled on you. However, please do not assume it is pure plus minus 25%. The RNG is based on normal distribution system where we tune the probability, where there is a chance to set it to have 67% within a plus minus 10% RNG, where the extreme number has a smaller chance to happen. This was implemented some time ago. So, not sure I quite get that, but basically the RNG, this is the fact that to make the game less predictable. So if you knew that every time you fired your gun, you were going to, fired your 88mm, you were going to pen an opposition, I don't know, VK every single time, it kind of really get a bit boring. But so they put in the RNG so that sometimes it bounces, sometimes it just doesn't. Its penetration drops by 25% or what have you. Sometimes it goes up, which means sometimes when you're firing at a tank that you shouldn't really be able to pen, you suddenly do pen because the RNG gods are in your favour. And I think that's good. It's frustrating at times, but I think on balance it's good. You don't want predictability. Many moons ago I used to play, I played a lot of tabletop games with little miniature figures, and there was a set of rules that me and my mate were big into for Napoleonic battles, and actually English Civil War battles, I think, with the same system. But anyway, we played these games, and there was very, very little randomness in them. You threw a few dice at various points, but basically there wasn't an awful lot. After a while it got boring as hell, because we would set up our table, we'd set up all our armies, and we'd look at it and go, well, you're going to win there, you're going to win there, I'm going to win here, and we're going to win here. And it always happened that way because there was no variability in it, and that is frustrating. We stopped playing it, and I think that's where you need the variability. You absolutely do. But it does seem like they also tune it up and down. So it's not always, there may be a higher chance of getting plus 10 or minus 10, for instance, from what they're saying there. So, interesting. Can you tell us what lessons you've learned from previous sandbox? We can say sandbox testing is successful. We collected a lot of data and feedback from players. From the previous testing, we've come to the conclusion that the players would like us to further polish the game balance instead of changing the vehicles they use dramatically. So yeah, definitely we do. Get the bloody matchmaking and the balance right in the game without changing everything. What did Wargaming learn from the Black Tank fiasco? I'm adding fiasco in there. So if you remember, they introduced the T-34B, the IS-6B, the Schmalz Panzer 58B. Basically, they took a standard model, painted it black, and charged you 30 quid for it, and it was just ridiculous. In the Black Tank case, we meant to celebrate America's Black Friday. Back then, we didn't have much time to prepare for it, 3 weeks. It happens every year, guys. It happens every year, Black Friday. So we decided to simply paint them black so we could get them ready on time. So we didn't want to miss the cash that was floating around. And using existing tanks wouldn't affect the game balance, which is true. We'll continue to direction of accommodation towards different service special times of year or seasons, so events. So yeah, basically they cocked up. Reading between the lines, they just cocked up, and they did. Will there be more unrealistic tanks for PC in the future? Warhammer tanks, or similar to Nameless and Edelweiss? Players were very upset about these tanks being in the game. I don't think we're planning to create more of these tanks. The Valkyrie Chronicle tanks are originally created for the Asian Japanese players for their collections. We are not going to sell these on other servers. Yeah, we believe you, Wargaming. We believe you. People really dislike the clown camo Patriot Liberté. What are the developers' opinions on this? It's a good question. We're creating a new customization system for the games where players can do further customization for different tanks. We want to make customization very good, so we won't be able to give you a release date because we don't want to rush it. So he's dodged the question entirely there, really. But basically, they are going to make it easier, probably for money, for us to customize our own vehicles in some way, which I think is kind of interesting. And you know, there are tanks that I really like that I might be tempted to customize, but if it costs real money, doesn't actually get you anything in the game, is there any point? Question around the Christmas loot box event and the similar thing that WoT Tanks do with supply containers, basically freebies that we got. And at Christmas, I don't remember if you were all playing it last Christmas, but Christmas boxes were fantastic. You fought battles, you won baubles, which then went on a Christmas tree and gave you all kinds of goodies, and it was good. It was good fun. I enjoyed it very much. You could buy some of them if you wanted to complete the set, and I can't remember what you got at the end of the day, but you basically got various rewards as you went along. I think crew members, if I remember rightly, Swedish girls, wasn't it? I think, but very, very good, a good thing to do. We like this idea, however, unlike World of Warships, which is a relatively new game compared to World of Tanks, the supply containers of World of Warships were implemented when they implemented the economic reform. For us, this is harder. World of Tanks' own legacy to consider. It is not easy to implement anything that will affect in-game economy. What about bonds then? You're screwing the economy with bonds, and you don't mind doing that. If we're going to implement something that potentially alter the in-game economy flow, we will have to plan this very carefully. It can lead to unpleasant experience for players when they decrease the amount of income from the battle to compensate for this. Players will have a deception of making less money. Bonds. That's all I'm saying to you. Bonds. Will there be more variety in random battles? For example, night battles and weather. We're going to be implementing night battles and adding weather. If we're going to add night battles and weather, we will need to decide whether it's only cosmetic or whether it will affect gameplay, such as lower view range for tanks during night battles, sandstorms, etc. They'll be carefully tested before they release them on the live server. I think this would be fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. If anybody gets excited about or reads about military history a lot, I mean, weather had a significant impact in some real life battles, and I think that would be fantastic fun. Frustrating as hell, I'm sure, but I think it'd be really, really cool. In World of Warships, I think when you're playing a game, you can have a tornado come in, which reduces the view range considerably during the game. And it adds a different level of excitement. Also, it can be a little bit frustrating. I don't know, but then presumably you could turn that effect on or off. I don't know. Would you consider the option of banning XVM? We're aware that XVM stats partly are leading grievances in the game, not only XVM focus, however. I think what they mean is that the people moan about XVM and, our team's crap. They're all full of noobs and yellow, red tomatoes. Yeah, I'm going to drown myself because I'm a knobhead. We can't simply just ban XVM from the game. Well, of course you can. Of course you can. You can ban other mods. XVM will also provides a number of functions on the top of showing player stats. We're working with the XVM developers. Some players do use XVM statistically to plan their battles. Well, yeah, okay. 2 years ago, we've collected statistics about XVM and realised that over 50% of the players use XVM without statistic functions. This is why we work hard to incorporate those functions into the game client itself, so making XVM obsolete. Recently we introduced our new rating system. We believe we'll be able to make a better metric system and allow players to have a better, accurate assessment of other players and comparisons between players. Yeah, okay. I don't know what to say about XVM. I use it. I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of sometimes looking at a team and going, oh my god, look at this load of rubbish we got here. I've also very definitely used it before now to target a Super Unicum who is possible to be targeted, because take him out the game and we've got a far better chance of winning it. However, if they took out XVM, I wouldn't care. Really wouldn't. Can we hide players in battle? Unfortunately, we don't think this is a good idea for the game, as someone playing without awareness of the players on the enemy team can make someone feel like he's playing against bots. It's also important for social interaction as well. We would not know who is in a clan, or it would be harder for a clan to track players as well. Yeah, I don't see the point. Why do you want to hide names? What are you guilty of if you want to hide names, eh? How is background battles going? It's successful in terms of balancing. Unfortunately, there are some issues with matchmaking as it clashes with ranked battles. Both game modes are only tier 10, and we're working on fixing it in matchmaking. Okay. Artillery is annoying. Will they be removed or changed further? Artillery will not be removed. Good. The class is for people who like to predict another player's behaviour. There's a proportion of players that really like this class, and some players only play artillery. Now players can survive longer without being one-shotted by artillery. You know, I think for all the fuss that was made about artillery, the one thing I would say is, how many games do you go into where there is no artillery at all and tanks just end up sitting in hold down positions and cannot be moved because you can't get round them because of the maps? If you had artillery, they'd be bashed constantly and have to keep moving. And I know it's a big joke about, you know, artillery stops camping, but it does. It does. And I think you need something like that. Now, I think they could limit it. I think 2 artillery a game is perfectly adequate. But artillery is a necessary evil, I think, myself. Will the current engine limitations on 127 frames per minute be removed with the introduction of the new HD maps and the graphics engine? We're aware of increased usage of high-end monitors. The idea of limitations with 127 FPS was not because of the cloud itself, it was due to the previous limitations of the big world engine, server engine. The client server has been completely rewritten with our proprietary engine. So basically the frame limit it will be removed. So if you are running monitors with a higher frame rate, it looks like in the future you will be able to take advantage of it. That's a more technical thing. Historic Battle game mode was removed due to overwhelming negative feedback from players. Will it return? And I think it's a real shame that they removed that. It just didn't work, but I think with a bit of effort they could have made that work. Question, this hasn't really been answered in a Q&A, but fate of the Chieftain Mark 6. Unfortunately, it's unlikely for it to introduce the Chieftain into the game. As much as we want to implement it into the game, we don't want to make it simply able to research from the Conqueror. Why not? If we can find some lower tiers that can fit into similar playstyles to make the Chieftain, then we'll consider implementing it into the game. I don't know what to say, really. So they're going to use a super Conqueror that is completely fake, doesn't exist at all, and not use a Chieftain Mark 6, which was a fantastic and real world tank. Words fail me. Will Wargaming ever consider a Romanian tech tree? Unfortunately, we don't think there's enough tanks. When will Polish tanks come? We're working on a Polish tech tree. We've already found all the vehicles for the tree, and we'll try to release the tanks as soon as possible. But it's too early to announce any dates. What's Serb doing? Is he working on his moon base? Serb is working for us. He's not working on the moon base project. He's currently working on other wargaming projects. Sense of humour, failure. We talked about black trees. A lot of these are repeat questions. So I think that's it, basically. So I don't know whether we learned anything new there. That Wargaming are not going to introduce the Chieftain. They are removing maps, but there will be some more coming. And they're still looking at remodelling some of the existing maps. That's the stuff I take from that. But let me know what you think down below. So could it be that the T10 is being replaced? That is the rumour doing the rounds at the moment, and a number of blogs have been reporting on it in the last week or so. And given the way that World of Tanks seems to be replacing her tanks all over the place at the moment, it's entirely possible. So T10 is the Tier 9 Russian heavy tank. It's the one that goes up to the IS-7, and again it's part of this drive to make things a little bit more consistent, that the tanks are very similar. Now the T10 has a very good gun but doesn't have much armour, whereas the IS-7 does, so maybe that's why, but they're looking at apparently the Object 257 to replace it. Yeah, so they were thinking about using the 257 as a premium tank, but now possibly going to replace the T10. Now the suggestion I also read was that maybe the T10 would then form a basis of another Russian heavy tank line, Now, I don't think that's likely, do you? I mean, you know, they don't ever feature too many Russian tanks in this game. So let's look at the object 257, tier 9 obviously, 1900 hit points, 850 horsepower engine, 15.5 power ratio, which is pretty good. Top speed of 50 is very good. Turret traverse 26 degrees per second, hull traverse 28 degrees per second, turret armor 350, wow, 240 and 100, and hull armor 150. View range 390. Don't know whether that, you can't really see from that picture what exactly the angling will be like on it. Presumably uses the 122mm gun that they all use. 248 penetration is a little low for a tier 9 heavy tank, and 340 with premium. 440 average damage is pretty standard. Load time of 12.3, aim time of 2.7, accuracy 0.38, all of which you'll be pretty familiar with if you're used to playing the Russian heavy tanks, and -5 gun depression. So yeah, looks, I don't know what I think about this. I mean, I think the T10's a really nice tank. I like it very much. Does it not fulfill the kind of line? I suppose it is a little bit different to the others in that line, but it's not significantly so. This object doesn't look particularly fantastic, particularly that gun. It's pretty pathetic, frankly, for a tier 9 heavy. But I guess they can buff that up. 248 penetration just doesn't seem enough. Anyway, that's the rumour. We'll see whether it's true. If they do replace it, we shall see in due course what happens. But another tank could disappear and be replaced. So some of you will be aware I've been a bit of a sort of a record keeper extraordinaire, trying to keep a record of all the tier 8 games I play. I haven't been doing it a huge amount of time, and also been playing an awful lot of tier 9s, trying to get through the Conqueror. But I have now played 109 games. This is solo games in a normal tier 8, so not a preferential matchmaking, if I can get my words out. A normal tier 8. So could be premium, could be just tech tree a tier 8, but a tier 8. So 109 total games in solo games. Of those, 17.4% have been tier 8. I don't think about that. 17.4%. So 15 of my 109 games, I was in the chosen 3, 5, 7 matchups, and I was top tier. 3 of those, 3 extra games, I was in an all tier 8 game, which is fine in some tier 8s, but in others you might as well be in a tier 9. So 3 of my 109 games I was in all tier 8s, and one of them I was in one of those horrible ones where it's 5 tier 8s and 10 tier 7s. So 17.4%. So conversely, let's look at the other side of the puzzle. 53 of my 109 games were in tier 10 matches, 48.6%. Almost half my games were tier 10s. Now, I kind of guessed that, because if you play a game for any length of time at tier 8, you see so many tier 10s that's fairly inevitable. But I was surprised. I was surprised how many. Nearly 50% of tanks. So you need a tier 8 that can actually deal with tier 10s, because you're going to see them a lot. 37 of my games were tier 9s, so 33.9%. Again, that's not the whole story, because 17 of those games were games where there were 5 tier 9s and 10 tier 8s, which again is not great matchmaking for you in a tier 8. So yeah, 109 games, 58.6% of them were tier 10s, 33.9 were tier 9s, and 17.4 were tier 8s. I haven't done that much platooning, but I can tell you it's even worse. Of around about 26, 27 games I've played platooning, I've had 1 tier 8. 1. Everything else has either been tier 9s or predominantly tier 10s. So yeah, all those people who were so excited by the new matchmaking and how it was going to change everything and how it was going to make everything even, Yeah, stick that one in your pike and smoke it. I mean, it's just a mess. Now, some tier 8s can deal quite happily in tier 10s. I mean, obviously you'd rather be top tier, but hey, you can't have everything. I was, but there are some tier 8s that really struggle, and if you're grinding through a tier 8 and you've still got stock turret and everything else, stock gun, stock engine, and you're put into tier 10s 50% of your time, you're going to get pretty cheesed off. So you can see why tier 8s is screwed up at the moment, just based on my sample. Now let me know down below, what do you see in your games? Is this kind of how you recognise, or am I completely off my head here? No, I can honestly say these are the stats. This is what I wrote down every time I play a game. If you watched any of my streams, I'll write in my little notebook beside my computer, sad I know, what tier it was. You know, I've been keeping that record for a while. I expect now I've ground through the Conqueror, I will be playing a lot more tier 8s, and I can see whether this is representative, but nearly 50% of games tier 10. GG Wargaming. So I hope you found that useful. If you did, let me know. Comments are always welcome. Really grateful for anybody who has anything to say, positive or negative. Stick that down in the comments box, and tick that thumb button if you enjoyed it, or the down thumb if you didn't enjoy it. But please let me know why you did that. That'd be really good to know. And in the meantime, enjoy your games, have fun, try not to take it too seriously, and I'll see you again soon. This is Gamer Dom signing out.